Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Ariel Benishai. Thanks so much for joining us wherever in the world you are, with special thanks and apologies to um, all of those who are in either very early or very late time zones. Again, I'm Ariel Benishai. I am an associate professor of economics here at William & Mary. I'm also the chief economist of our Aid Data Research Lab, and your master of ceremonies for today. So apologies for all the lame jokes coming your way in advance. I'm going to welcome you in just a few minutes to our virtual convening, first virtual convening, I should say, for GeoField. I'll be joined by Richard Caldwell from the Gates Foundation and offering some welcome words as well. So we'll just try to set the stage for what is looking to be a really exciting agenda for today. Let me just share a few slides to kick us off here and set the stage. Hopefully that's coming through well for everyone. So again, welcome to our first virtual convening for GeoField. For those of you who don't know GeoField yet, no worries. We'll get to exactly what that is in just a minute. But I want to kind of lead you up to that foundation of the GeoField initiative and some of the underlying forces and ideas that came to shape it. So the big idea really behind our activities today is this thought that we can leverage Earth observation to make more powerful and better impact evaluations for climate smart agriculture. Now we've got some Earth observation folks in the room, and you and other people in this discipline have been working for decades to use satellites, unmanned aerial vehicles, and lots of other sensors to learn about the Earth, agriculture, the environment, and economics. We also, of course, have lots of people working directly in agriculture to try to make it more responsive to climate change and to the broader set of challenges we're facing currently. And we've got lots of folks in the room who come from an impact evaluation background. And you and others in this discipline have been working, again, for decades to try to move the needle so that we can use randomized control trials and quasi-experimental designs to create plausible counterfactuals and help programs learn about what's working and what's not working. These disciplines had often been quite separate from one another. And our goal today and over the next 4 years is really to look for those key opportunities of intersection between these disciplines, where we can look for ways to synergize the disciplines' separate work to strengthen impact evaluations and, again, improve the productivity and climate sensitivity of agriculture around the world. So how could this work? Well, there's a lot of different ways that this synergy between these disciplines can really help improve impact evaluation and learning about climate smart agriculture. Firstly, Earth observation can often dramatically expand the kind of geographic range and scope of measurement. We can get much larger samples. We can get coverage even in places that are too fragile or difficult to survey. We can also measure a much broader range of outcomes, including agricultural outcomes that are harder to capture in traditional surveys or other on-the-ground measurements, climate and environmental outcomes that are not well covered in those surveys either. And often that Earth observation lets us get more periodic assessments, by which I mean fuller time series, right? Time series where we actually have measurements on a much more frequent basis, and longer term follow-ups as well. So situations where we can return to existing interventions long after they've been completed and look at what those longer tails of impacts might look like. Earth observation, interestingly, also gives us a really good way to to think about gender and other biases that might be present in ground-based measurements like those coming from surveys. Because those Earth observations and other types of measurements often have errors, but those errors may not be, in fact, correlated with the kinds of errors and biases we get on the ground. And so we can use those independent measurements to try to understand how much our traditional measurements might be biased. And then finally, Earth observation can also help accelerate the pace of innovation in impact evaluation and climate smart agriculture more broadly by helping us learn more quickly and at larger scale, and by trying to integrate some of these innovations and technologies directly into both measurement and to the interventions themselves. These are all exciting new directions that are real areas of promise for integrating Earth observation into impact evaluation in agriculture. And a lot of what we'll talk about today are different aspects of all of these potential improvements. But these were some of the motivating ideas that helped us form GeoField. GeoField is an initiative that is a collaboration between a number of core partners. As I mentioned before, I'm chief economist here at Data, a research lab at William and Mary, and one of the core partners, along with Dev Global, who our partners are helping to put this very awesome agenda today and all the production that you're seeing, as well as helping with a lot of the remote sensing and Earth observation work that we'll be discussing. A great core partner at Mercy Corps, we'll be hearing from folks there today as well, who are active both in the climate smart agriculture space and in the impact evaluation space as well. So a really great complement in terms of getting a chance to see the stuff on the ground and how it's working. And then in just a moment, I'll turn things over to Richard Caldwell, our Senior Program Officer at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who are sparking and providing resources for a lot of this work. So that's the organization. But what do we actually hope to do as part of GeoField? Well, one of the very first set of things we'll be talking about today are what we call our showcase set of use cases. These are example studies where folks are integrating Earth observation directly into impact evaluation in climate smart agriculture. We're hoping to put together a set of use cases. Today, we'll share with you our rapid impact use cases. Those are the ones we've already started on just this year to take shape. And then there'll be a set of longer term use cases that are still very much in the works. And will be lots of opportunities to have discussions with many of you about whether there are good candidate studies that might make good examples for these use cases. One of the exciting things about GeoField is that we have resources for our teams at these core partners to do a lot of the Earth observation work in partnership with you and others to try to do this integration. So our hope is very much that we bring kind of a lot of those resources to the table for these use cases. We are also forming a broad community of practice. These convenings, like today's virtual convening and some in-person and hybrid convenings we'll tell you about later on, are a good way to bring this community together. We also have some digital channels and lots of other tools we'll talk about later on. And this community of practice is really intended to span, again, many user types. So those of you, again, who are coming from the impact evaluation background, those of you from Earth observation and natural science backgrounds, those of you who are directly involved in agricultural programming, those of you who are more in a funding role, all of those folks coming together into this broader community. And then we'll be producing a lot of public goods as well. Those include some special issues in academic journals we'll talk about later on, policy briefs, guidance documents for how to integrate this different types of Earth observation into impact evaluation, along with the data and sample code for many of the use cases that we'll talk about along the way. So lots of different ways to engage with GeoField. That's a pretty exciting agenda for us. We just launched GeoField just this past fall, and looking forward to the next 3+ years of getting this initiative rolling. So again, welcome to this very first convening. Let me turn things over now for just a few minutes to Richard Caldwell. Again, Richard is our Senior Program Officer at the Gates Foundation and partner very much in this work. Richard?
Thank you, Ariel. Yeah, I'd like to add my welcome to that of Ariel's. It's great to see the community come to get together for the first time. And, while this meeting is fully virtual, I really look forward to meeting many of you in person at future COP events. As Ariel said, I'm a senior program officer on the agriculture team. And specifically, I sit with the strategy and impact portfolio. I oversee a lot of our evaluation work with a couple of other people that I think are on this call. Currently, we have like 17 impact evaluations in process, plus a number of other evaluation types going on. In addition, I manage a number of impact research grants and data use grants. So I'd like just to take a minute to set the context and provide perhaps a little bit of the genesis of this investment. In 2020, we made a grant to the University of Washington to oversee our evaluation work, focusing primarily on ex post impact and retrospective evaluation. And prior to 2020, it was really left to individual POs to embed evaluations into their grants. And this meant that evaluations were not at all coordinated. They were left to the whims of individual program officers, and some chose to evaluate and some didn't. They were kind of likely hidden with no cross-learning capacity. In fact, at the time, one would be quite challenged to know which investments were even being evaluated and with what methods. They were not independent, and the fact that they were tied to grant funding could potentially introduce bias into the evaluations. And probably most importantly, they were usually underfunded and underpowered and thus weren't rigorous. So we changed that with an evaluation policy, and then through the University of Washington, they manage most of our evaluation work. Another big change that happened about the same time is our emphasis on climate change. We received additional funding from our co-chairs to focus on climate change with a particular mandate to carefully monitor and assess how our climate investments would impact the resilience and adaptive capacity of small-scale producers. So while our climate emphasis is relatively nascent, we're committed to using impact evaluation to assess change going forward. And now that evaluations are managed centrally, there's more opportunity to harmonize our approach on how we measure our impact and to innovate on how we evaluate. And two areas of innovation that we're actively pursuing is the incorporation of remote sensing, which is obviously the focus of today's convening, and the use of agile data tools. So I believe remote sensing is a tool, obviously, that can improve both the cost effectiveness and the quality of our evaluation work. And so I'm really excited to hear about the progress that's being made today. And I thank all of you for joining. And I think with that, I'll turn it back to Ariel.
Thanks so much, Richard. Thanks so much. Yeah. Let me just walk us through our agenda today then. Okay, so in just a moment, we're going to have our very first panel with two recently completed impact evaluations that have Earth observation integrated into them. These are really exciting works by very different teams that I think we'll really enjoy. After that, we'll have our very first GeoField rapid impact use cases presented. There'll be 3 of those. We'll have an optional, we'll have a lunch break. That part's not optional, but you'll be, the optional part will be some activities during that lunch break. So you're welcome to stay on and chat and engage while you munch on your lunch. After that, we'll have 2 more sessions. We'll have a dedicated session focused on communally irrigated perimeters with some really interesting work, especially from West Africa. And then a 4th panel that will be more of a discussion panel with a different set of user types and partners and stakeholders talking about the challenges and opportunities for increasing the use of Earth observation and impact evaluations. We'll have an activity for all of you that we'll be doing in breakouts toward the end of the day, and then we'll finish up with just some concluding remarks at the end. So that's our overall agenda for today, and thanks so much for joining us for all these different pieces. With that, let's go ahead and launch into our very first panel, our recently completed impact evaluations with Earth observation.